Okay, back to the name of Sukkot. It's getting close to Sukkot. Okay, yesterday we discussed that if you light the candles in the Sukkot, which you're supposed to, but because it's Shabbos, even after the candles are out, you're not allowed to bring them back into the house because they're muktzah. So you have to make sure not to bring expensive candelabras into the Sukkah. We also discussed the difference between the first night and second night with Kiddush, the Shechianu, before the Leisha B'Sukkah, after the Leisha B'Sukkah. One thing I want to mention before we go further, and that is, like the men, they make a Leisha B'Sukkah by Kiddush, right? Like we learned yesterday. But the women, again, according to the way we hold, Ashkenazim hold, the women are allowed to make a bracha, even on a mitzvah they're not obligated to do. So when do women make the Leisha B'Sukkah? If they want to make their own Leisha B'Sukkah, when do they make it? So the custom generally is, they make it after they make hametzi on the bread. In other words, they listen to Kiddush, they answer Amen, then they go wash for hametzi, and when they make the hametzi on the halachos, so then they also make a Leisha B'Sukkah. And as we mentioned, even if you forgot to make a Leisha B'Sukkah, you can still make it as long as you're still sitting within the sukkah, even if you're finished eating already. People that are listening to Kiddush and they hear Leisha B'Sukkah, they don't. If they want, they can have in mind. If they want, they can make their own. So again, even if, let's say, one man is making Kiddush for 5 men, and the men want to make, they could be yaitzu with the Kiddush makers Leisha B'Sukkah, but if they want, the custom is they should make it after hametzi, before they eat the challah, because that's when they're actually eating the challah. Also, our custom is that on the first 2 days of Sukkot and Hoshana Rabbah, we dip the challah into honey. Like we learned by Rosh Hashanah and Erev Yom Kippur, we dip the challah into honey. So you make a meitzi, because you need lacha mishnah. And then after you make, after the meitzi, or after the Leisha B'Sukkah, if you're making it then, so you dip the challah in the honey 3 times, and then you eat it. And we said many people, and that's what the Rebbe used to do also, that afterwards, the second piece he dipped into salt. So he did both. What?
Do you do that in the whole history until the end? Only on
the Rebbe writes, we do honey, Rosh Hashanah, Erev Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and Hoshana Rabbah. Cholamayit, the Rebbe writes, Mehecha Teisa. That means, yeah, no. You want to use honey, use honey. The inyan is not to use honey the whole Tishrei, because you're supposed to dip the challah into salt. There's an additional thing to dip it into honey, but you can't just dip it into honey when you're not supposed to, or when the custom is not to, because then you're losing out dipping. Now you could dip the first piece of challah into salt, and then you could take a whole jar of honey and eat it with the challah if you want. I mean, you could do that. If your wife lets you and your dentist lets you. If your wife lets you and the dentist lets you.
So you have to put first on salt and then honey and then...
No, if it's not those days where you eat honey, you first dip it into salt and then you eat it, and then if you want to use honey, you could use afterwards. Okay, anyway. Because the first night of Sukkot this year, again, is Friday, like we learned by Rosh Hashanah, so the first night, it's Shabbos, but it's Yom Tif. So there's a whole discussion, halacha, do you say Shalom Aleichem Eishes Chayil? Don't you say Shalom Aleichem? So our custom is we say Shalom Aleichem Eishes Chayil quietly. What does it mean quietly? You don't sing it. If you always sing it, you don't sing it. You just say Shalom Aleichem Eishes Chayil quietly. And then we make the Yom Tif Kiddush with the Shabbos edition starting from Yom HaShishi. What? No, because I told you, some opinions hold that if it's Yom Tif, you don't say it at all. Because the emphasis is on Yom Tif. So our custom is like a compromise. We say it, but we say it quietly to show that it's Yom Tif, not only Shabbos. What? No, different customs. Some people don't say it, some people say it loud, some people, whatever. Our customs say it quietly. Okay, we learned yesterday if you go sukkah hopping from place to place, and what else is there? Now Kiddush has to be b'makom suda, which means like this. What happens if you're making Kiddush in the sukkah, and then you want to go into the house to eat, you're going to have a problem. Because you can't make Kiddush in one place and eat the meal in a different place. We learned when we're learning Hilchos Shabbos that you need to make Kiddush in the place where you're going to be eating a meal, or at least have another ounce, 3 ounces of wine, or 1 ounce of cake, or challah. So if you're going to make, let's say, I'll give you a simple example. The sukkah is full, so the women are going to eat in the house. Okay? But they're going to hear Kiddush in the sukkah. The problem is women also have to hear Kiddush. They also have to hear Kiddush in the place of the meal. So if a woman's going to hear Kiddush in the sukkah, and then she's going to go wash and eat the whole meal in the sukkah, then she's not going to be Yotze Kiddush. Because her Kiddush is not in the place where the meal is. So she has to eat at least a kazayas or another 3 ounces of wine or grape juice in the sukkah, and then if they want it, they can go into the house to eat. But it has to be in the same place. Okay, next. The first night of Sukkot, because again, it's Friday night, in benching, you have to say in Yalaviyave. If you forget either of them, you have to repeat the benching. But say in Yalaviyave, if you forget both of them, there's a very interesting Rabbi Kiva Eger, in fact, it's the first children of Rabbi Kiva Eger. He says, he maintains women are not obligated to eat a meal on Yom Tov. Therefore, what? I don't eat it all. Therefore, according to him, if a woman forgets Yalaviyavai, she doesn't have to rebench because she doesn't have we learned already. Yalaviyavai, if there's an obligation to eat, so then you have to bench if you forgot it. When there's no obligation to eat, like Rosh Chodesh, if you forget Yalaviyavai in the benching, you don't have to repeat benching. So he holds, because women are not obligated to eat Yom Tov meals, so if they forgot Yalaviyavai, but everybody disagrees with him. The bottom line is that women, if they forget, also have to make rebench. Okay, that's that. Okay, now, first day of Sukkot is Shabbos, so there's no lulav and esrog. Which means this year there is no biblical lulav and esrog. Biblically, it says, "L'kachtem l'chem b'yom harishon." The biblical mitzvah of lulav is only the first day of Yom Tov. The other 6 days, right, is all rabbinic. So this year, because the first day is Shabbos, we don't do lulav and esrog on Shabbos. So then, I heard a very interesting thing. There was, what happens if a guy is not going to bench esrog on Shabbos? I mean, he won't bench the rest of the week. He knows he'll only have an esrog on Shabbos. The rest of the week he's not going to have. Should he do it on Shabbos because it's still the biblical mitzvah, even though the Chacham say you're not allowed to? So the answer is you're not allowed to. But I heard recently this week, there was a story in the concentration camps. They got an esrog, it was Shabbos, okay, but they didn't know if they were going to make it alive the next day or not. So they were questioning, maybe they should do at least the biblical mitzvah of lulav, because at least, how are they going to die without doing the mitzvah of lulav? So there were a number of rebbes and rabbonim in the camp, so most of them decided, no, you're not allowed to do it. But one holy Jew, I forgot who he was, one holy Jew said, you know what, I don't care, I'm doing it anyway, because maybe I'll die the next day, I'm not going to die without a lulav. So he benched lulav and esrog, he probably didn't make a bracha, but he benched lulav and esrog on the first day of Shabbos. But the problem is, halachically you can't do that. He was a great tzaddik, he had his different things. But what people need to keep in mind is, because the lulav and esrog is forbidden to take on Shabbos, the lulav and esrog on Shabbos are muktzah. That means where you put them is where they stay for the entire Shabbos. You can't move them for any reason whatsoever. So you have to remember that before Shabbos begins, before the Yom Tov begins, the first day, because you're not going to be using lulav and esrog, you're not allowed to move it, and therefore you have to leave it where it is without moving. What? That was it's an old Mifsoim question. Different people say different opinions. To my not so humble opinion, no.
What was the question?
The question is, Tisha B'Av in the morning, we don't put on tefillin. Svardim do, by the way. Okay, we don't. Ashkenazim don't. So what happens if you meet a Jew Tisha B'Av in the morning? You want to put tefillin on him because in the afternoon he's not going to put on tefillin. Should you put on tefillin with him or not? So it's an old age question from the time Mitzvah began. Mitzvah tefillin began. What do you do? Some guys say you do it. I don't think you should, because if we don't do it, it means you don't do it. I'm sure people disagree, but that's fine. You're entitled to it. Okay, so now, Shabbos, there's now Saturday, the second night of Sukkot, which is Saturday night. So in the Kiddush, we have, again, the Yak Nahaz, like it was by Mitzvah Rosh Hashanah. So you have Yain, Kiddush, Ner, Havdalah, Zman, Shechianu, and then you have, in addition to that, Leisha Basukah. So the first night you make Leisha Basukah, it's the first, and then Shechianu. Second night we make the Shechianu first, and then Leisha Basukah. We explained yesterday the reason for that. So bottom line is, and you have to make Havdalah in the Kiddush, together Havdalah in this. And our custom is you just look at the candles, you don't do anything with the fingers, you don't bring them closer to you, just look at the candles and say the bracha Be'er Haish. Okay, first morning of Lulav, which this year Sunday morning, second day of Yom Tiv, you're supposed to get up early to do it. You're supposed to get up early the first time to do the mitzvah of Lulav. What early is, by some people in this shul, it's probably 12 o'clock in the afternoon is early. By other people, it's now lechatchila. Not mentioning any names. Lechatchila, you should try to bench lulav after sunrise. But the Eved, if you do it by dawn and onward, which is 72 minutes before sunrise, so but the Eved you yaitz the mitzvah. So people have to go to work, whatever, they're allowed to bench lulav and esrig before, as long as it's after Amud HaShacha, Lisa Shacha, which is dawn, which is practically speaking 72 minutes before sunrise. But the mitzvah of lulav is really a whole day. It's not like, tefillin ideally you should put it, but tefillin you could also put on a whole day if somebody didn't do it in the morning. But the mitzvah of lulav and esrig is really a mitzvah for the entire, you could do it any time during the day, from sunrise to sundown.
What's the time earliest?
Earliest sunrise,
Close to 6.
it's getting,
Right, first house in the villa, not that.
No.
Should we do it even before?
okay, yesterday, I think that 5:30 was Aleisa Shachar. Sunrise today was 6:44. And it's getting a little bit later. So, but it's going like a minute a day. It's not going that much. So,
5:40.
6:44 is sunrise. But you could do it already since 5:30.
Would you go to mikveh first, or you do it through a class?
Whatever you're in the mood of doing. If you can go to mikveh first, you can go to mikveh first. Whatever. But, now, there is a custom brought down in halacha, by the way, that before you bench lulav and esrog, you don't eat. You don't eat. Because you want to show the importance of the mitzvah, so you don't eat. Now, if somebody's not going to be able to bench lulav until later in the afternoon, they can eat. It's fine. Now, there's an interesting thing from the Rebbe. The Rebbe writes that because you have to bench lulav in the sukkah, technically, so really there would be a question of making a leisha basukah and benching lulav. So the Rebbe suggests that you should, after you bench lulav and esrog, you should eat cake in the sukkah. And then when you make a leisha basukah on the cake, it's going to cover the benching of the lulav that you just did in the sukkah. In fact, there's a story when the Rebbe, before he became Rebbe in 770, so he one sukkah's morning, the Rebbe, after benching lulav and esrog, the Rebbe gave out cake to everybody. Yeah, meat period. And we had a cake, and he was giving cake to people. So somebody came over to him and said, like, you're giving out cake before davening so openly? Because in halacha, it's questionable. By Chassidim, they do it. But, on the Shulchan Aruch. So the Rebbe answered, with a Chassidic minhag, you don't have to be embarrassed from. So this is what needs to be done. So that's as far as getting up early, doing the making a bracha on the lulav and esrog. Now, when you do the lulav and esrog, you have a few minutes left. When you do lulav and esrog, wherever you're doing it, home or whatever, the proper way of doing it is, according to our custom at least, you face east. Should be this way, okay? But I'm facing this way. So you face east. When you make the bracha on the lulav and esrog, the custom is your feet are together. Make the bracha. And then you hold like this. You hold the lulav in your right hand, unless if you're left-handed. So you hold the lulav in your right hand. And you make the first bracha shekishan mitzvah al natilas lulav. First then you make a shechianu. So when you start the bracha of shechianu, you take the esrog in your left hand, and then you start saying bracha Hashem Oken Ma'am shechianu v'kimanu v'gianu lizman hazeh, and when you finish the bracha, you put the lulav and esrog together and shake it. That's how you do the mitzvah. In addition to that, we have what's called the nanuyim, the shaking the lulav and esrog in all directions. So after we make a bracha on the lulav and esrog, we also shake him in all directions. And like we always say, right, left, center, up, down, back. Okay, right, left, center, up, down, back. That's when you're facing east. What?
If you were to put it together, you say bracha on it, to the axis, you put it together.
Once you put them together, you can't say a bracha anymore. Because you did them. That's why many people in the world, I'll make it quick. You ever see people, worldly people, they hold the esrog upside down. Okay? So they make a bracha, they hold the lulav in their right hand, and they hold the esrog upside down. And then, after shechianu, they put it right side up and they shake it. Why do they do it that way? Because again, if you put the lulav and esrog together, you can't make a bracha anymore because you already did the mitzvah. But you can only do the mitzvah when the lulav and esrog are held the way they grow. And if you hold the lulav downward like this, you can't do the mitzvah. If you hold the esrog upside down, you can't do the mitzvah. So therefore they hold it upside down, because then even if they touch, you still didn't do the mitzvah. So you could still make the bracha, because it's not the way it grows. If it's not the way it grows, you're not yet to the mitzvah. And then afterwards they turn it over. So we don't do that. We hold the lulav in our right hand and we say shechianu, and then we finish the shech and put them together. The other days of Sukkot, we just hold the lulav, and then when we finish the bracha, we take the esrog and put it together.